Hey y'all, I hope you're well. Welcome to another episode of Healthcare Boulevard. This is a podcast where we shine more light on healthcare, and our goal here is to provide more options to people looking to choose healthcare as a career path, regardless of their background. My name is Sena Kapomo, and I am your host and creator here. I thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your support. Remember, you can tune in on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. I am here with another interview, first of its kind. I have my guest today is actually retired from the profession, so I'm excited to talk to him and get a bit of a different perspective. His name is Lee. I'll let him introduce himself. Lee, welcome to Healthcare Boulevard. How are you doing?
Oh, hi. Yeah, my name's Lee Aldridge. I'm doing great. I am a retired perfusionist. I retired last May of 2025. I spent approximately 43 years in the profession and started out at the Cleveland Clinic in the early 80s and spent about a total of 17 years with them.
Wow.
I was their director of LVAD and ECMO training from 1984 until 1987, or 1997, excuse me, and senior staff during that time, an instructor in their school. And then right in around 1998, I got married and we were going to have a child, and I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I helped start a pediatric heart program. And
Mm.
I've been there for 27 years and operated on over 1,000 babies and thousands of adults. And it's been a heck of a ride.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me here. So as a perfectionist, give us a little bit of a background as to how you got into the profession.
Well, there were no real official schools with university affiliations at the time. I was working as an on-the-job respiratory therapist and actually working with the perfusionist and Dr. Ankeny. He's the inventor of the chest retractor that we see in virtually every opera room. And you'll be able to talk to your surgeons or whatever about that, and they'll know who Dr. Ankeny was. And that got me interested in hearts. And then I heard that the Cleveland Clinic was going to open a school where they would train you to do the heart-lung machine. And one of the respiratory therapists, oh, that's just a glorified ventilator. Well, he, of course, wasn't correct. So I got into the school there, and like I said, it was very loosely structured. Um, we sometimes had an instructor in the room, that kind of thing. But everything went wonderfully. And then I ended up staying there for all those years.
Mhm.
And it was just a wonderful opportunity because we were right at the beginning of
Mhm.
all the cool stuff with heart surgery, uh, stopping the heart, cardioplegia. That came out after we had done cases without it.
Mhm.
And all the other technologies and everything, they evolved out of this. But it was pretty much, let me just try this and see what happens when we were doing it. And of
Mhm.
course, the equipment was very rudimentary, and we did not have all the fancy monitoring and computerization and everything that they have today.
Mhm.
So much more of it was like being a sort of a glorified plumber.
I nothing compared to you being at the start of a whole profession, but I was one of the first I was part of the first cohort in my PA program. So I can in a bit of an iceberg, tip of an iceberg, understand a little bit of, you know, being sort of the guinea pig. But the great part of that is, you get to see the start of something that, now is a full-blown profession with standardized schooling and testing and so forth and education. For for your time, how long was your training?
It was approximately a year,
Okay.
although for part of that time, we really were, we were being paid to pump cases, by the way, in those days. Students nowadays, what? But they paid us, and some of the time we were completely supervised. There was already somebody down the hall or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It got to the point where, of course, the surgeons knew us, and we were there with some of the big names in heart surgery, et cetera. And if those guys didn't trust you, they wouldn't let you in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a wonderful opportunity, scary as hell, but it was a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful opportunity.
I can imagine. Now, from the respiratory point of view to get into perfusionist, did you utilize any of your skills from being a respiratory therapist when you did end up in as a perfusionist?
Well, being in respiratory therapy gives you a basic understanding of blood gases, breathing, human physiology, et cetera, and some
Mm-hmm.
of the pathologies associated with all of it. But nothing can really compare to actually getting in and doing the job because
Mm-hmm.
you just see so much, and you're responsible, of course, for much more than you are as a respiratory therapist.
Yeah. Um, to seeing how the profession is now structured. What is your do you how do you feel about the current uh, um, structure of the profession? How did that come about? I'm sure you saw the transition of it going from just an apprenticeship, which is how a lot of professions start, right, including my own as a PA, to now being all the regulations and having the standardized testing and so forth, accreditation and so forth. What was that transition like, and how did you fit into that? How did your profession fit into that, being one of the first who started as in the apprenticeship setting?
Well, we quote were on the job trainees, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And once it came where they had developed the American board testing to certify perfusionists, et cetera. And I took that test after a couple of years of working when they got it ready. And what I see as the biggest difference now is that students have access to so much more information that we simply just didn't even know some of these things that was all still being discovered. How to do certain procedures on bypass, how to fix certain things, how to treat certain pathologies, and how that would be cannulated and everything else. All this was just, hey, let's try this and see what happens. And sometimes the results were great and sometimes not. But students now have a much more structured and truly a far superior education coming out of school. The rest of us, we had to learn this and self-study along the way to figure it out. The gentleman who taught us about EKG and all that was one of the guys from the biomedical department at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, nowadays, all these are structured much more completely. And the students nowadays are coming out with an incredible wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. So where did you finish your career? The institution was that in Albuquerque?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I retired. I'm still here in Albuquerque. We live here. It's wonderful. Over 300 days a year of sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
And we're up at just over a mile elevation, so we don't get the harsh summers like you would in Phoenix or something like that.
Right, right.
And just a tiny bit of snow. After living in Cleveland all those years, right by Lake Erie with the snow, it was horrendous because Cleveland was at the bottom of a hill right by the lake, the clinic, and you would drive downhill
Mm,
to get to the clinic. And
mm.
when you had snow, of course, it was a toboggan run.
That's that's
You
a
get your
risky move.
you get your bobsled and push it along and go.
Right.
And so it was a wonderful change of environment. And yeah, I just got to the point, I'll be 70 this year, and I thought, it's time. I want to spend more time. I have a special needs son. I know that you have kids.
Yes, I do. Yes.
And I have one. You've seen him probably a little bit of him on my TikTok page because he is my true hero.
I
I,
love it.
I mean, I've operated on over 1,000 kids like him, and he just amazes me. So that's one of the reasons, another reason why I'm here doing this, because it'll
Mm-hmm.
save someone else's kid someday.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk a little bit about patient cases, like some of the technologies that you experience, and you alluded to some of them earlier on. What are some big changes, or I would say improvement or developments that have come along that you've seen and experienced in your profession, being one of the OGs perfusionists?
I can name two right off the top of my head. First of
Mm,
all, was the change from bubble oxygenators to membrane oxygenators. A bubble oxygenator, very simply, was if you imagine a plastic pot, and at the bottom of that, they would put a pumice stone, like you use to get your calluses off your heel.
mm,
And they'd stick the oxygen line into the bottom of it, and then up, just like a fish tank, all these fine little bubbles would bubble right up through the blood, and that's how it oxygenated.
okay.
Now you had direct gas to blood contact, so it was hemolytic. It was not perfect at all.
Mm,
And the fine degrees of control and everything that you'd like to have, a
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
little difficult. So when they changed to a membrane oxygenator, which actually put a barrier between the gas and the blood, that dropped the hemolysis a lot and allowed much finer control for patient blood gases, et cetera. And
mm,
it was much less traumatic. Learning to use those devices when they first came out, however,
mm, that was going to be my question, I'm sure.
well, the first oxygenator membrane that came out was called the Travenol membrane oxygenator. And we started using this in the early to mid 80s. And the Cleveland Clinic was a primary testing site. They had an intellectual property agreement with Baxter Travenol to test these devices and report back. And also other things that we were working on as well were their intellectual property, even though we thought of it. That cost me a lot in the future, but that's another story.
Mm,
Anyways, the Travenol membrane oxygenator, everything came in separate parts. Nowadays, it's all in one unit, much more consolidated, much smaller. It had two pumps. One, it was meant to model the heart. One pump for the right side, one pump for the left side. So basically, the venous blood from the patient drained into a collapsible bag. That bag went through a pump, and that pump pumped through the heat exchanger, which is how we control the patient's temperature through controlling their blood temperature.
mhm,
Then another tube to the oxygenator compartment. And the oxygenator was a big flat membrane folded like an accordion. And on one side of it, they had a bladder.
mm,
And to change your oxygen, your PO2, you would pump up a sphygmomanometer bulb, and a bladder would squeeze the membranes together so the blood path was thinner between them. And that gave more PO2. However, what that did was it changed the amount of volume that the oxygenator would hold because you're
mm,
squeezing it all down. And number two, it increased the resistance pumping through it. So it had a natural limit where you just couldn't squeeze it to get any higher PO2 oxygen values because you
mm.
couldn't pump through it. It'd be too
Right,
tight.
right.
So that design was flawed, but it was a great start. And nowadays, to go on bypass, you just take your clamp off of your venous line and the patient's blood drains to the heart-lung machine. In those days, it was different. That same bag that the venous line came to had another line running out of it and went to a separate reservoir over here. And you would take that reservoir and raise it or lower it up and down the pole to make your blood level. So if you lifted it up, more blood would go into the patient. It would be harder to drain because that was your
Mm,
level. And if your patient was here and your reservoir was here, then the blood would drain downhill. But once you raise the reservoir,
it's
it
going to
wouldn't drain
push.
out of the patient. So that's how you
Mm,
fill and empty the patient with a separate unit over here.
mm,
Second pump, once it came out of the oxygenator, was the arterial pump. And it had its own bag and everything too. And then it would pump through a filter and go back to the patient. I mean, it was extremely arduous to set up because everything
mhm,
came in separate parts. We actually had one gentleman on the perfusionist who would come in 2 hours earlier than everybody else, and he would set up all the pumps at the clinic. You know, they had 10 operating rooms. We have 10 pumps set up in the morning. And this gentleman would come in every day and set up the pumps because it took a
Wow.
while. And
Right.
you couldn't do that in emergent situations in those days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's one of the biggest changes. We do a different kind of oxygenator, which nowadays the oxygenators are very reliable and absolutely great. Believe
I'm
me.
sure you're not manually raising or dropping bags at this point anymore to to drain the patient or perfuse the patient. Yeah, different
It,
times.
it was quite a bit different. And
Mm-hmm.
when that would design the two pumps, the one pumping the venous blood ran 5% faster than the one on the arterial side. So the arterial side never emptied out and pumped air to the patient.
Mm-hmm.
Those two pumps were linked, but the thing was huge and it was ridiculous to set up, but it was a great first step.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a
Mm-hmm.
learning experience. The second change was the introduction of cardioplegia. And I spoke about this on my TikTok, where before they used to do cases where you're going to do a bypass to a patient. They clamp the aorta, they'd throw some cold ice water slush on top of the heart would fibrillate, and the
Mm-hmm.
surgeon would real quick sew the distal graft onto the heart. Then they'd take the clamp off and they'd resuscitate the patient, start the heart again, defibrillate, whatever needed to be done, rest them for a minute, and then they do it all over again for the next graft. That was called intermittent cross clamping, and there was no cardioplegia, no myocardial protection in that era.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy because they always had to hurry real fast. And, of
Mm-hmm.
course, with the heart fibrillating and stuff, you have something that's moving. It's like working on your car when the engine's running. Just
Mm-hmm.
like doing off pump cases now, although they have stabilization devices to make that easier. So once cardioplegia was introduced, it changed the whole scene. Surgeons could slow down, they could visualize everything much better because it was absolutely still. And it changed the whole face of what we could do with cardioplegia and heart surgery. Then you could do intracardiac procedures, valve replacements, and then it eventually, to the aortic replacements, stuff like that for dissection. It really, really advanced the art and our ability to handle more pathologies. And then cardioplegia was, evolved and turned into blood cardioplegia, where the crystalloid with the high potassium that paralyzes the heart was mixed with some parts of blood. That helped also, quote, feed the heart a little bit because you had some oxygenated blood going through the heart while you were stopping it. And also because blood was thicker than the cardioplegia solution,
Mm-hmm.
the increase in thickness, viscosity of that cardioplegia was thought to be able to push its way through tight little coronary artery lesions much better than just the crystalloid, which couldn't exert as much pressure on the walls of those arteries. And then, of course, they developed retrograde cardioplegia. If you have a coronary that's completely blocked, now they were able to attack it from the other side, cannula in the coronary sinus and pumping it backward through the coronary circulation. So all the protection and everything evolved to the point where it's actually, in most cases, a very safe operation now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What the I can only imagine like being in your profession from with your journey of essentially what maybe every 10 years or so or maybe less having to learn new ways of doing your job, new techniques, new devices. How was that? What was your take on that? How did you do that with every new improvement in your way of doing your work?
Well, I think everybody looked at new improvements with a mixture of excitement and horror because you'd have to, learn all this over again. And every one of us, there was no manual. There was nobody to call and ask, well, what did you do in this case? Because there wasn't anyone. It
Right.
hadn't been done.
Right. Yeah.
And that, going back to what for students today, they have so much information and so much help available that that's one reason that they should not be as scared about doing this. We did things, I'm going to try this and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, either, oh man, that was great. We're going to put that in the notes. or I'm never doing that again. Hope I don't get fired. So the learning curve, it happened, yeah, every couple of years in that first
Mhm.
decade or so that I was working. And so many new techniques and new opportunities came up. ECMO, uh, we started with the most rudimentary echo, the Extracorporeal Life Support Organization, ELSO, which is in effect now. Those people have done a wonderful job at absolutely examining all the different uses of that device. Things that we hadn't even had the chance to work with or anticipate in those days. An absolutely wonderful organization filled with great information. And once we got up into the around 2000 or so, then it was smaller leaps in generations of equipment, et cetera, as they refined things rather than, hey, here's something brand new, try this. And the amount of laboratory analyzers, how those improved. For instance, when you're on bypass, you have to be given heparin or some alternative anticoagulant
Mhm.
so that it won't clot going through the machine. Now, the standard test these days is called the activated clotting time. And basically, there's just a little device, you put a drop of blood in it, it tells you how long it takes the blood to clot. Well, we started out, we'd buy empty test tubes and we'd get a sample of diatomaceous earth. That's stuff that was used in swimming pool filters.
Mhm.
Just a little bit of that down in the bottom of that tube, and then you put some blood in there, and we'd warm them in our armpit because there weren't even test tube incubators in those days. So you'd warm it, you pull it out of your armpit, and you tip it back and forth a few times and see if you start to see any little fibrin traces, clot starting, and that would be your ACT. Now, of course, that's absolutely scientific and just perfect, but that's all we had.
Mhm.
And they really only did those ACT tests in the beginning on redo operations where patients perhaps had already been exposed to heparin and developed some sort of resistance to it.
Okay.
So the evolution of the lab tests, blood gas analyzers, et cetera, we used to take a sample of blood in the syringe, put it in a little ice in one of those kidney-shaped emesis basins, and they'd have a guy come and he'd run it over to the lab, and then, depending on whether he was flirting with the nurses next door or on
That's
break or whatever,
important.
then you get your blood gas back at some point. And now they have one that sits right by your thing or one the size of your iPhone that'll do it for you. Yeah, and we never had that luxury back then. So all the lab tests, and of course now
Mhm.
they have platelet analyzers and everything to look at coagulation and platelet function. It is absolutely just exploded in terms of the amount of good information that people have at their fingertips now to do this.
Mhm. Now, have you seen, I'm sure you have, a change in length of the surgeries, cardiac surgeries, as the profession and development progresses in your profession? How have the time changes been at the time of surgery being affected?
Well, the training for surgeons as well as perfusionists got a lot better, and they also had, once again, more information at their disposal how to train them.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I talked about intermittent cross clamping and them having to work very fast, there was only a limited number of type of surgeries that they could use that technique on. With the cardioplegia, surgeries did become longer, but as time has gone on, everything is refined and it's sped up again because the surgeons are getting better at making all these running stitches, knowing exactly where to cut, not having to stop and look at the echoes two or three times, that kind of thing. They now have a much better idea what they're doing as well. So the surgery time, I would say, has improved or sped up
Mm-hmm.
over the
Mm-hmm.
last maybe few decades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As a current day perfectionist, where do you see any improvements that are on the way still?
I've been I have this terrible habit where sometimes I lay awake at night and I think about stuff. And I I see applications for artificial intelligence,
Hmm.
not to replace perfusionists, but to help us refine and dial in our job. Um, I'll spill it. I was going to do another TikTok presentation on this, but I see where we have a patient and we're going to prime the heart-lung machine, fill it with solution, that solution. Do you know when you go to a fast food place and they have the soft drink dispenser and it has like 8 different kinds of Dr. Pepper and you can pick all the different things? I see AI being able to make the solutions when they analyze the patient's current, like they draw blood gas, look at that patient, see their chemical situation, and
Hmm.
that solution can be customized to that person. And that way, you're going to have the best physiological outcome the minute you go on bypass.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then there's another process that I was deeply involved in, which is now called zero balance ultrafiltration. This is a way that we remove patients' potassium who, let's say, have some chronic kidney dysfunction. And once you give the cardioplegia and have high potassium levels, you have to get rid of it. You can't come off the pump when the potassium is too high. The heart won't beat correctly.
Hmm.
So the dropping fluid in, it's sort of like using dialysis to clean up a certain chemical, a certain ion, whatever that you're trying to get rid of. And I could see inline blood analyzers in the heart-lung machine, which are connected to an AI generator to one of those little machines. And
Hmm.
this dialysate solution that's running in is now custom tailored to the exact physiological situation that you have on pump. So not only will it reduce the potassium if that's what you were after, but it'll normalize their glucose and all their other ions, trace electrolytes, etc. And it will monitor that and inject just the right amount. Like you go to the Home Depot to buy paint, they have one base paint color and then they start adding in those little things to make what you want.
Hmm.
I see the AI being able to control that in the future. I'm
Hmm.
not I'm not any engineer. I can't develop it. I'm not a coder or software writer like that, but I do see that potential
They
coming.
use. Okay. All right. That's interesting. Well, if that does come to pass, well, you know, you can say, hey, I saw this coming. And who knows, there might very well be people working on that right now as we speak, right? We never know what's in the works until
Yeah,
we hear about it. And that by the time those of us not in the industry or not in the developmental stages hear about it, it's been in the works for some years. So it's not far-fetched because AI is in a whole lot of things that we do now, a whole
got
lot.
that right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm gonna start wrapping up here, but I did want to ask you, how is retirement going?
Well, because I have a special needs son, I get to spend more time with him.
Mm-hmm.
Last summer, he and I were partners, and he became the New Mexico State Special Olympics golf champion.
Nice.
And we've been spending time doing that. And I also get to spend more time with the rest of my family, my wife and my other son. My other
Mhm.
son graduates from nursing school in August.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
He's planning on being an advanced practitioner. I think he wants to be a CRNA like mom.
Nice.
And that's one great avenue. You've chosen another great avenue. And
Yes.
hopefully it's not too terrible having 2 little ones. And
It's not. It's very doable with a community partner, I'll say, and the village, which we've been lucky enough to have both.
that's excellent because
Yes.
ultimately you miss a lot of things being in our profession.
Mm-hmm.
I miss some things, of course, that I'll never be able to get back, but I'm making sure that I spend, quality time now. And I can stay up late. I actually make it past 10 o'clock. And and I can sleep in if I want to. It takes months for when the phone rings, you don't lose your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a perfusionist, whenever the phone rings, it's usually something really bad.
Mhm,
I'll be
mhm.
honest, you get called in and it's nothing like, oh, we could wait till tomorrow.
Right, 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 right.
So, so it takes a while for that to go away. But the other thing is that the TikTok and everything else, it's given me the chance to sort of keep my head in the game a little bit and not just totally turn into a fossil.
Mhm,
Uh-oh,
mhm.
even though my hair, but
The, like your son said, and I totally agree, is just having allowing younger people, whether people who are perfectionists or wanting to be in the profession, or people who like myself are not in the field of perfectionists at all, but just interested, can hear more about what it was like and how far this profession has come. Which a lot of time us young folks, as you may call us, rightfully so, we don't necessarily get to go back, right? We get this thing, we get a profession, we have to do this, do that, and we get busy with life. We may learn about the history of our profession, not may, but we often do learn about the history of our profession in school, briefly, but then we focus, of course, on the medicine as we should. But this gives us a sort of like an entertaining way of learning and going back, sort of having some flashbacks about good flashbacks about the profession of a perfusionist.
there's been a lot of information that's just been lost. I mean, you'll read about the history, but oftentimes those are very short and just descriptive of certain equipment or something like that, but it really doesn't describe what doing the profession in those days was like.
Mm-hmm.
And other
Mm-hmm.
things, like the zero balance ultrafiltration I mentioned before, I actually invented that process, but because
Nice.
because Baxter had the intellectual property, um, I had the pharmacy make a solution that would be perfect for that application. And
Nice.
that was about 10 years before the introduction of Prismasol, which is one of the most primary solutions used for CRRT, continuous renal replacement therapy in the units, and also for zero balance ultrafiltration in the operating room on the heart-lung machine.
Okay. Okay.
And Baxter, I believe, took that information and finally came out with Prismasol about 10 years later after I had the pharmacy do that for us. So I didn't invent the name for that process. Somebody, like I said, much more clever than I made a good name for it.
Mhm.
But we presented that in 1995 at the American Society of Anesthesiology.
Nice.
For people
Nice.
just to see how these things have evolved and how the various techniques and modalities and everything have been improved or invented and how
Mm-hmm.
they've
Mm-hmm.
affected how we do our job. Like I'm sure you've seen it in the same thing in yours. How about the new digital stethoscopes? Just simple like that. How much that
Mm-hmm.
improves things. You can do it on your watch or your phone and just put something on somebody.
Right. Right.
My son's pacemaker, he's got a little transmitter in his next to his bed.
Oh,
It
nice.
read it reads and interrogates his pacemaker, and
Mm.
we don't have to do anything.
Wow. I know the big thing, speaking of AI now, is the um like the way we do notes as providers. I know there's a lot of more than one, I believe, different platform that are trying to make that. We're not trying; they already have it. It's not as the standard of care, so to speak, yet, but different ways in which we can take our notes faster, and we put in some keywords, and it sort of create the HPI for us and plan and things like that. So, AI. AI and improvement, whether you know regardless of how you feel about it, the fact is if it's faster and get things done about the same quality, 9 times out of 10 the profession will progress in that direction. So it's definitely good to take some time to go back and see how far we've come, as in your profession and just as medicine overall. But Lee, thank you so much. I think that's all the question I have for you. One last question though. Any advice for aspiring perfectionists?
Well, I've told everybody who I've communicated with so far, and I'll tell this to all of your listeners as well. To take on this job, you are a hero because it's not something everybody can do,
Mhm.
but it's something that certainly you can do.
Mhm.
There's much more advanced training, information available. It's not as scary as it was.
Mhm.
I've told horror stories and that just sort of to be entertaining in a way because nobody's ever going to see these things again in the way that we did. And that's a good thing.
Mhm.
But I also want them to know that myself and there are other senior fossils out there who will be happy to help them and talk to them. I recently did a podcast for the student liaison for the American Academy of Cardiovascular Perfusion.
Nice.
Spoke to many of them. It's the same thing I'll tell every time. You guys can do this. It takes some serious work, but the rewards are beyond incredible.
Mhm. Mhm.
We had one little girl from Saving the Children came in. She was 7 years old. She weighed 30 pounds.
Mhm. Wow.
And she had a bad ventricular septal defect. Her host family here, I guess she was from one of the Central American countries. Her host family here, when we wheeled her out of the operating room and she was pink,
Mm.
those are the moments that are more powerful than any study struggles that you
Mhm.
had.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
realize that you're a hero that's going to give people their family back.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it could be your family. So never be afraid to do something that you know in your heart is right.
I second that. That's very profound. Thank you for that. And like you said, it's not easy, but it's definitely needed, right? Definitely needed.
And it's attainable.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I hope retirement continues to be smooth. So enjoy waking up whenever you want. I cannot say that. I'm not there yet.
Oh, it sounds like you got your hands full right now.
Very full, very full. But hey, there's a time for everything. So I'm enjoying this time and stage of my life as you show yours.
Yes, ma'am. Enjoy. Every moment is precious.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. I'm glad you're spending time with your family. Congrats to your son again to be join the nursing field. That is a great field to be in.
I agree.
All right. You have a beautiful day.
You too. Thank you very much for the time.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.
All right, that's all I have for you today. Thank you again for joining me. I appreciate you. Please subscribe, follow, like, comment, and share. And stay blessed. Bye.